Welcome, everybody, to the Seattle Sports Union Podcast. My name is Abraham DeWeese. I'm back in with Soul Man, Brian Solak, and producing for us is that damn dirty duck, Matt Page. And today we have a very special guest, Teren Kowatch. How's it going, Teren?
Going great. Yeah, thank you guys for having me on again.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We're going to do some Husky talk today because you are covering those boys at Montlake. But we hope we can get some Mariner questions in because you are one of our supreme knowledgeable baseball aficionados. So we'll get to that here in a minute. But just want to give a shout out, everybody, to Teren for being on. What is this now? The fourth
or fifth? Yeah.
Fourth or fifth? Yeah. So thank you for being a regular. You're much smarter than all three of us collectively. So we appreciate the knowledge.
Hey, and don't forget to mention we got to meet him at Everett Aqua Sox game, so that was cool.
Yeah, it was Cal Raleigh's rehab start.
Yep.
Well, that didn't really work, did it? We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. Let's talk some Huskies here.
And did Abraham get your name right? By the way, I believe he did.
Yep, Teren Kowatch.
Good job, Abraham.
Only took 5 episodes to get it correct. Huskies come in. They're 17th ranked in the nation. Last couple of years with Jed Fish. First year, kind of 500, 6-6 record, 1-9-4. Sounds like we're expecting even better. Like there's a good foundation built. Expectation wise, what do you think this team should be?
I think anything less than a 10-win team would be a disappointment and would be underachieving what this team can do. I think if you were to ask anyone within the team or the coaching staff, they would say college football playoff, which is not out of the question, I don't think. But I think setting the benchmark at 10 wins would be the where to shoot for. I mean, you're looking at their schedule, and yes, they play 5 ranked opponents, but you're looking at it. They avoided Ohio State this year. They avoid Michigan, especially a game at Michigan. They do host Indiana, but they're hosting them. They're playing them at home at Husky Stadium. So I think that this schedule lines up very well for the Huskies, and I think that kind of being in that kind of mid-teens area is a good starting point for them to kind of gain momentum in the non-con and kind of the lower level of the Big Ten play that they have, and kind of if they take even 3 of those 5 ranked games, I think that there's a very realistic chance they do make the playoff. But I'm looking at 10 wins is where they at least need to be to get to that point.
That's awesome. As Husky fans all around would probably agree with me. That's where we want to be every year, is talking about playoffs. The last 2 years obviously seemed like a rebuild, but it looks like it's good. It's a good trajectory, going from 6 to 9 and, hopefully up further.
Yeah, and that's kind of the trajectory that Jed Fish had at Arizona too. Granted, he started with a much lower floor, and I think where he left was kind of the ceiling of what at least the team he made could have been. Starting with that 1-win season, and I think it was 2021, and then last year that 10-win year in 2023, where Noah Fafita looked like a future first-round pick in that season, and then comes here, obviously. Big Ten school, some returners, even though not a lot from the championship team, a lot of underclassmen that he inherited. So kind of developing those guys. And then from that point starts bringing in his own players, his own recruits, whether it was the transfer portal or traditional recruiting. And now it's kind of where what he wants it to be at, of it's a combination of that veteran leadership, some guys from the Natty team like Rashid Williams, who's kind of slated for a starting role this year. You also have, the young guys and the true freshman contributors like Cody Green's going to do, or Derek Coleman-Brusa, or like Ramzak Furian. So it's kind of where Jed Fish wants his teams to be in terms of the best players will play. And we have options to find the best players at every position. And I think that lends itself to being something that works well with this coaching staff, especially now they're in its 2nd year under Ryan Walters as defensive coordinator. Now it's, like you said, 3rd year under Fish. So the offense, players know the offense now, players know the defense now. It's less install and more just refreshing and fine tuning those things. So I think it's
awesome.
Optimism is not misplaced.
Without bringing up the Damond Williams drama, you're the quarterback of the Huskies. How's he looking so far into camp?
Looking much better. And quick aside for the drama, I know from a fan perspective that was very bad to go. From a player's perspective, and from the way the staff and it might as well not have happened. at this point. The player, I mean, granted, they wouldn't say anything otherwise, but
Oops, did it freeze?
but
Teren, I think you froze for a couple
my
seconds there.
froze.
Yeah, from players' perspective?
Yeah, they coaches and players wouldn't say otherwise, but from a players and coaching's perspective, it might as well not have happened. Like, they've completely moved past that. But Damond this fall, I will say he looks a lot better than he did in spring. Spring, it was kind of it kind of felt like he never really had an outright bad practice. It was just there was kind of some that were fairly average. I think you kind of saw that in the spring game a little bit, where it was, a lot of, behind throws behind and kind of, mistimed placements. But then he also had, that deep touchdown pass to Rashid and that throw on the sidelines to Jordan Clay. And I think that this year there's a lot less of those meh practices. He definitely hasn't been perfect. I mean, defense has definitely gotten theirs more than a couple times this training camp. But he looks sharper. He looks quicker to decision making, whether that's strictly staying in the pocket. He is staying in the pocket for longer, which I think is a very good development for him. But even on plays where he decides to run, he's quicker to make that decision rather than kind of staying behind the line. And I think that he's taking noticeable developments and strides as just a pure quarterback and signal caller, but also just quicker decision making has been a very noticeable development.
I'm glad to hear that because as of last year, the book on him, we saw it with Penn State, we saw it with Oregon, is get him to run. He'll want to run. And then all of a sudden he stops trusting the guys downfield. And I'm excited to hear that he has a little bit more of it. Sounds like a pocket presence.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that last year it was a combination of factors. For one, his first year starting, he's not going to be perfect like in his first full year, at the helm, and then also the just some of the injuries that were on the offensive line, very little continuity, especially in the latter half of the year. This year, more offensive linemen are healthy, so he has mostly the similar line that he had in the spring, with the exception of Colt Dieterich until Landon Hatchett's fully healthy. Now he's the center instead of Brian Flores, which is where it was before, or Jake Flores, sorry. And now he also more wide receivers are healthy, so it's less like, people are kind of in and out. It's been pretty consistent with who he's throwing the ball to, so I think that has helped a lot as well.
That seems to be one of the big differences from this year to last year is the continuity on both the offensive and defensive line. How would you say they rank against the top teams like in Indiana or Oregon in the trenches?
I think offensive line I would be more comfortable in than the defensive line, and I don't think that's a matter of talent. I think it's just a matter of needing to see how things are, because you look at the offensive line, and yes, against some of the tougher teams like Oregon and Ohio State, they struggled a little bit, but it was still a solid unit overall when you look at grades and things like that last year. And then you insert Dieterich as kind of a potential utility 6 offensive lineman that can play any position. When Landon Hatchett comes back and takes back that starting center role, and if you do have injuries on the offensive line again, here's the best graded lineman in Conference USA last year, and you can kind of put him anywhere. And I think that helps when you go into kind of the dog days of the season, so to speak. And then also just in general, returning 4 or 5 starters from last year is a big advantage over any team in the modern college football landscape, especially on the offensive line. And the left tackle's the one position you don't have a starter returning, and the guy taking that over is a 6'5", 320-pound mountain of an 18-year-old who was comfortable enough from the coaching staff getting that nod right away. So I think that offensive line I'm comfortable with. Defensive line, the talent's there. Alenius Davis, he's probably been one of, if not the best defensive lineman performers of the offseason so far, even though he's kind of been limited the last couple practices, which is good. You want that from your leader. You kind of added to that depth back by getting back Ty with that 5th year of eligibility. And then you have Derek Coleman-Brusa, who, again, another true freshman starter, another 18-year-old, but looks the part of a Big Ten inside defensive lineman. And then you have Ramzak Frurian, who also 18, 19 years old. He's the fastest defensive lineman they have on the field. Could probably outrun a couple defensive backs they have on the team. Wow. And that's speed, and he already has that going for him. And then, he's another player who has noticeably gotten a lot better from spring to now and is really fine-tuning that technique. He had a good practice today. And I think that, again, with the defensive line, when you have all those pieces, and it'll come down to, put them against those lines and see how they do. But I think from a depth perspective at both positions, they're in a much better spot than they were last year. I think from a talent perspective, like on paper, they could compete. But I'm slightly more comfortable with the offensive line. But I do think the defensive line will have some games where they're more than able to have their own, hold their own.
Who is this left tackle, Cody Green, that you're talking about? I know he's a freshman, but it sounds to me like he's possibly the next Lincoln Kennedy to come out of the UW, or Walter Jones, future Hall of Famer. I mean, you watched him play a little bit. Tell us a little about him.
Yeah, kid's a freak, and I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
He again, like 6'5", 320 as an 18-year-old. I don't even think he turned 18. If I don't know his exact birthday off the top of my head, but I think he was 17 when spring practice started.
Wow.
So and he's getting first team reps, and
Wow. Okay.
strictly from like an athletic profile. Again, they kind of knew they wanted to get him first team reps like after those kind of results came in, and they were like, okay, we'll see what this kid has, give him a shot. And he's done nothing to let go of that position. I mean, they could have when Dietrich's was healthy.
Did it freeze again?
Am I good?
Yep.
Okay. When Dietrich was healthy going into fall camp, if they weren't confident in Green at that left tackle spot, they could have had Green or Dietrich take over that left tackle spot, which he played a little bit at Sam Houston, and have Flores keep going at center. But they were comfortable enough with Green in that position, and he's been tested a little bit in the spring for sure. I mean, they have their edge rushers, they have their interior guys, but they present a lot of different fronts, a lot of different moves, as any good defense does. So sometimes he goes up against Alinius Davis and he loses some matchups, he wins others. And I think that there will be some growing pains for him in the fall for sure, during the season for sure. But I think that he's a player who more than has earned the opportunities he's received at this point. And I think that at this point, it's less a matter of they just don't have anyone there and more a matter of like, no, he's earned the right to do that. And I think that, with him getting those chances as a true freshman and being tested kind of right away, I think there is a chance for him to, by the time he's a junior or senior, if he stays here that long, I think it's a very real chance that, you could see him up for some awards.
Hey, so we got him coming in, Cody Green coming in, but we also have a wide receiver coming in that seems to be getting some buzz, Christian Moss. What can you tell us about him? As we lost Denzel Boston to the draft.
Yeah, Moss was for me was kind of a surprise of fall. I mean, I know coming into spring he was kind of the guy that the team targeted to be that potential Denzel Boston replacement, but he missed all the spring, and it seemed like that Jordan Clay was kind of the guy who was getting a lot more reps, and Rashid was kind of doing his thing. Seemed like he was kind of on his way to locking down a starting spot. So for Moss, what he and wide receiver coach Kevin Cummings said the other day was during the summer, he just made up for that lost time. He threw himself in the playbook. Now he's capable of playing either spot on the outside and in the slot, which is something that Fish and the rest of the coaching staff loves, just that variability and, what they can do with an offense with that player. And yeah, if you were to put together a list of the top performers of training camp, like if he's not two, he's one.
Okay.
Just yesterday he had a couple touchdown passes. He had another deep pass today. It's every single practice he's making plays, and he's really developed that connection with Damond, and the physicality isn't just something that's on paper. He's used it in practice. He's won those 50-50 balls. He's fought through that contact, and he's done kind of what Denzel Boston did of just using that physicality and size to his advantage and winning those matchups. And I think that he's really kind of put himself to be a favorite to earn that starting role. And I think that at this point, with kind of Clay missing most of fall camp and Roebuck being a very strong performer in training camp, Rashid also doing well, I think that, it's kind of those three with kind of Chris Lawson substituting in there in different positions that are kind of your wide receiver core. And I think Lawson is definitely going to be of a lot of those deep balls that Damond threw to Denzel last year.
Okay, cool.
So this is still a Husky question, but I'm going to kind of turn away from the football team real quick. Have you seen the ghost of Don James walking around the field down there? I mean, perhaps, or in the halls. I mean, I hear rumors he walks around every day, and He picks who he wants to talk to, and I'm just
I'm
curious.
I'm sure he's been around, but honestly, I if he has been there, I haven't paid attention enough to notice.
Well, let's talk about the living then. There's going to be a new broadcaster. She's been around for a while in the Husky sphere, Elise Woodward. Now she'll be the main person on the calls. Have you had a chance to talk with her yet?
No, I haven't had a chance to introduce myself, but I have. She has been at practices. She has been asking questions, and actually, Brady Farkas. I found out that they actually know each other from. I would have to pull up the
Okay.
text, but like Brady knows everybody. Brady knows everybody.
He does.
But yeah, I need to introduce myself at some point. So far, she seemed great. She like talks with the fans sometimes, just kind of like on the sideline watching things, and yeah, I think they made a great decision with that hire for sure.
Yeah, she knows her stuff. She's very good people. So right on. Back to the football team now. I'll go back to the living, like Abraham said. So obviously, I'm trying to learn the Husky players. Obviously, being a Cougs, I did write these ones down. I read that you guys have UW has some pretty good linebackers, like last name Manu, Alexander, Tariq El Ukda, and that Alexander's like on the preseason Buckus award watch list. I mean, share a little bit about the linebacking core.
Yeah, I mean, going into this offseason, it seemed like if there was one unit you would highlight on the defense as like kind of the central cog that kept that thing going, it was the linebacking room. Now they've been kind of limited over the last few practices, just because Manu and Sale have been kind of deemed up with minor stuff, but not anything that's expected to keep him out for an extended period of time. But you look at Sale, one of the fastest players on the defense. His linebacking coach said probably one of the fastest linebackers in the country. He kind of doubled down and saying, "So no, I'm the fastest linebacker in the country." And then Brian Odom, inside linebackers coach today, also said it's like another second year Donovan Robinson Jr. is faster than him. So kind of a fun little competition there, just in terms of the speed from those two guys alone. X-Ray Alexander. Yeah, that butt kiss preseason thing is well deserved. Just he's consistently a guy who just does his job. He's never going to be in the wrong place on the field. He's always going to be something or someone who is where he's supposed to be at all times. Jacob Manu is probably, from just a pure talent perspective, the best linebacker on the team. He's, the guy who in the NFL you would put the mic in his helmet on the defense, and
Okay.
he's another guy kind of like Alexander is always where he's supposed to be, but also a guy that can generally wreck a game. Buddha, I'm not quite familiar on his game, but another guy who's just athletic, can be in multiple different roles and do well in that regard. And the way Brian Walters likes to work his defense, I mean, we've kind of talked about it, is having four guys in a base defense that usually has two starting linebackers gives you a lot of options. So depending on what they can do, they can potentially have four starting linebackers on the field at one time. They can maybe have one, two, bring a guy down on the edge to either blitz or to disguise coverages. It's a unit that not only is kind of a representation of what I talked about earlier, of that combination of like veteran leadership, but also young players, but it's also just from an ability standpoint, probably the one of, if not the best unit on the team, not even just the defense. And I think that if you point to a unit that's like, this is where the Huskies are top 10, 5-3 in the nation, and it's going to be the linebackers.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Very cool. Question about the Apple Cup. It's going to be on a Sunday this year. I've given up on complaining about it not being at the end of, start of November. But I mean, like that, those days are gone. But now we're on a Sunday. We're on Peacock. What's the idea here? Is there something that makes this a benefit? What's the pro to this?
God, I don't know if there is a pro. Honestly, I'm kind of in the same boat of, I mean, like, I'm from Idaho, born and raised. I was a Pac-12 kid. I hate that the Oregon and Oregon State and the Apple Cup have kind of gone this way. I'm like you. I want this to end this. I want these games to end the year. But I think if there is a pro, it's Sunday night football. Yeah, it's college, but you have a market for that. You have people who are watching TV in the fall looking for those games, and it's natural. Like you said, it's on Peacock. It's nationally streamed or broadcasted. So I think if there's a benefit, it's that UW's a 17th ranked team in the country. Washington State is a program that's trying to, kind of be the linchpin of this new Pac-12 and establish that's like more than just kind of that group of six standpoint at this point, or, view at this point. And if there's kind of a mutually beneficial way to keep Washington in kind of that like nationally public thing of like, we're not just a good team, we're one of the best teams in the Big Ten, and Washington State kind of establishing itself as like, this is the new Pac-12 and we're going to make some noises here. Have a Sunday night football game where you can kind of corner a national market.
So there are no other games at that.
I'm sure there is, but
okay.
People flick the channel. It's they find that thing, and plus it is a PNW matchup, so you have a whole region that's going to be watching right there. So,
gotcha.
Nice. Are there any other battles that we didn't discuss yet that like have stood out to you? Like maybe
the running back battle has been pretty even, I would say. I think it still leans more to Quade Carr Jr. at this point than Jalen Lamar, just because Carr got those reps in spring when Jordan Washington went down, and Lamar and Cooley were still recovering from their respective injuries.
Okay.
But they've both made plays in the run game and catching the ball out of the backfield. Carr is kind of the more athletic of the two, that guy that kind of has the combination of, breakneck speed, but also probably a little bit more strength than people give him credit for. And Lamar just has that experience. He's kind of does everything well type of running back. So I think that so far, if you were to ask me like who I think would start, I would say Carr would probably have a little bit of an edge, but I wouldn't be surprised either if they gave it to Lamar. I think that's one of the things that will kind of like the mock games and the scrimmages will kind of be a very key separating point as to who gets that starting role. And also it's like, maybe there's some plays where they go with both of them in the backfield. That's something that I think they could very well consider too. So I think that that's probably the one role for me that is kind of still up in the air. I would say that, unless, an injury happens or Jordan Clay just kind of has a series of monster practices from now to the end of fall camp, I would say wide receiver is pretty locked, at least from the top four.
Okay.
Which that was kind of the other lingering question going into camp. And I think offensive line is kind of settled in where it is when everyone is healthy. So I think that aside from running back, there's kind of not a whole lot of lingering questions onto who will start going into this year. It'll just be a matter of who's healthy and kind of who makes this final push as to, for the linebackers, they got 4 guys who can start, which to get the nod based on who's healthy or who looks better in the final week or two of training camp.
Right on. Kind of cut out there, but you said I think we got where you're going with that.
Yeah.
The loss of Jonah Coleman and Adam, he got to the draft, and then the loss of Adam Muhammad. Do you see this team going to more of a pass-heavy attack, or will they go with the committee that you're talking about?
I think it'll be balanced. I think it'll be a much more balanced offense because just with the way Jedd Fisch runs it, it's, he had Jonah Coleman all 3 years he was at Arizona, or for 2 of the years he was at Arizona at least. So it was, when you have that threat in the backfield, it opens up your playbook in the passing game. It's that's kind of the way football just goes in general. It's, you have the play action available, and when you have guys like Moss and Rashid on the outside who can run deep, and a quarterback like Damond that's very comfortable throwing the ball deep, that's kind of how you open that up, is with the play action. So I think that they will be looking to establish the run a lot. I think there's maybe one benefit to having Carr and Lamar back there compared to Jonah. It's that, they're probably both, I would say, a little bit faster than Jonah. So I think when you're trying to establish the run, they kind of are able to do more with that playbook a little bit, just from, maybe they're an option to catch a ball out of the backfield or, run a screen that maybe Jonah quite wasn't, just from, first down play, you're trying to get chunk yardage. It's like, if you want Jonah to get that, you just hand him off the ball because he's a tank of a person and can like carry the front 7 5 yards downfield just by himself. But, when you have Lamar, a guy who can kind of do everything. He can also pass block. Carr, who just has that speed, it opens the door for you a little bit. So I think they'll be more balanced, but I do think they'll kind of follow a similar general mindset that they did last year of like, we're going to look to establish the run first and build the pass game off that.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Have you got to meet any, or just you can just name one, but obviously Dub has a rich history, but have you got to meet any of the alumni?
Not yet. No, I mostly kind of hang out with the other journalists when practice is going on. But I know Will Dissly stopped by. I know kind of the same day he announced his retirement, Myles Gaskin was there. So there's some excitement. There's a lot of guys just kind of like coming back, hanging out and watching and offering advice who are, pretty excited over where this team will go and kind of what they can do this year. And I think that's encouraging to see for sure.
Awesome. I saw your article about Myles Gaskin, by the way. It was a good article. So where can our fans find that article?
Yeah, Roundtable Sports, roundtable.io. Just go to the main page. You'll have the options of MLB sites and college sites. And, I cover the Huskies and the Mariners as well. So that's mainly where I am. And then if you happen to find your way to a Blue Jays site, maybe you'll see an article from me over there when I'm just helping out people.
Right on.
Well, Teren, thank goodness football season's starting, right? The Mariners, they're just a bucket of laughs right now.
I thought there was a football game that started with that game earlier this week.
That, of course, being the 22-0 game against the Brewers. We'll get to that in a second. I just want to, I think congrats are in order because it looks like Kade Anderson is going to come to the Mariners on the day that you said he would.
Yeah, well, I think that was Brady that called that, but I definitely
was that Brady? My apologies.
Yeah, I think that was Brady that called that, but I definitely agreed that it was going to be when they came home. I don't think they were gonna bring up Kade for the road trip, but yeah, he's ready. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's whatever the most optimistic of expectations anyone could have had for him, which were high because he was the 3rd overall pick for a reason and got that invite to spring training despite not throwing in a game. He's exceeded them. He is the best pitcher in minor leagues at any level, and no matter what their experience, no matter if they've had major league experience or not, he is the best starting pitcher in the minor leagues. So I think that he's ready. I think he's gonna do his thing. Obviously, AA to majors. I don't think he'll post a sub 1.1 ERA like he was in AA, but I think he's a genuine article. I think he's everything he's shown he is and more. And I'm excited to see what he'll do.
Will you see him on Saturday night when he starts?
Yes. I will be back on the Mariners train with them being back home and covering this homestand.
Awesome. Is he going to be on a pitch count? Do you know though?
Don't quite know.
Okay.
Normally when homestands begin, Justin Hollander will be out for interviews and stuff for a scrum, and he'll give injury updates and stuff. I'm sure a lot of those questions will be answered tomorrow, but unless they had a general pitch limit for him going into the season, I don't think there is any reason why he would be limited. He's been on a once a week rotation in AA, and Saturday falls on that, so I think that he should be able to have the normal workload he normally does. In his minor league starts.
Awesome.
So, man, who's the other guy that you're excited about, the pitcher in the minor leagues?
Ryan Sloan?
Yeah, Teren, what's Ryan Sloan's
I think
look like?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be. I think when rosters expand, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to call him up. But I lean more to thinking that if granted potential lockout, all that disclaimer that we have to say when we talk about next year. I think that it's more likely that he'll kind of factor into next year's plans than this year.
Okay.
His stuff is legit. He's a genuine number 1, number 2 guy in a rotation. I firmly believe that. But Kade was just so polished right away and ready to go right away. And you look at Sloan stuff, and the second half of the year he's been dominant, but you look at that first half of the year, it's like, okay, yeah, there was still some growing he had to do, some command stuff, some issues with walks in the first half. So I think that, it's kind of a slightly different situation where you look at Ryan and it's like, okay, yeah, the stuff he has is ready to go. It's like he's definitely fine-tuned that, but kind of more slower along compared to Kade, who was just, you know, kind of the finished article almost immediately. So
I will get excited for Kade Anderson, but I mean, I got excited about our pitchers that we had. The wheels seemed to have come off on every single one of those pitchers.
mhm.
Like Wu and Kirby look like they don't know how to pitch anymore, and
Bryce Miller too.
Bryce Miller, like you name it.
Yeah.
What is going on holistically? Because it's very hard for me to just rationalize that they can all be bad at the same time. Like it just seems like usually, well, out of 5, a couple are bad, one or two are average, and one's great. But the averages aren't working for us, Teren.
Yeah, it's so hard because I don't think there is one overarching answer as to, because you could say the same thing about, the bats. It's like, why is Cal still hitting like this? Why is second half Julio not here yet? Why did it take like Josh so long to like start getting the bat going again? Now he's doing well. His average is up to 270, but it's I think my and disclaimer: none of the players will ever say we've played a lot of games in the last calendar year. None of them will use that as an excuse. But I think when you look at the last calendar year, and at least we'll keep it with the pitchers now for the sake of just not being here for another 2 hours, but you look at Bryce and what he went through last year, he just wasn't kind of able to like get it going even when he was back. He just was clearly dealing with something, and then kind of had that delayed start to this year. Had that great first half where he was kind of like steadily ramped up with the piggyback and like really hit his stride. Now he's at the tail end of the thing that, this is the most innings he's thrown in 2 years. So I think that he has that going for him. You have Kirby, it was kind of similar where last year, delayed start, kind of started to pick it up toward the end there. Playoffs were a little touch and go with that, but again, deep run into the playoffs, and now he's at the point, he's at a fully healthy season. Again, most innings he's had in 2 years. So I think you look at those two guys, and it's like just a matter of, your body needs to get used to that workload. And I think that that's kind of where they're at right now. Was they were able to do that in 2024, and because they had a normal call-ups, progressions, established that, and then they kind of both got hurt. They had to get ramped up slowly. One of them had a delayed start to this year, and then now you're kind of at the point where it's like, okay, now the workload's starting to catch up with you just because you're not. It's been 2 years removed since you had that. So that's my view on them. Brian, it's kind of like what he said after those starts. I mean, he had a good outing, I think, like his last one, which was refreshing to see a road start that, he didn't, wasn't totally awful. But I think that I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just a matter of kind of sometimes him trying to do too much to not have those kind of starts on the road. Because again, you look at the splits, home, one of the best pitchers in the major league; on the road, one of the worst. It's like it's that big of a separation, and I think that you kind of have to take into account the mental game a little bit of like him just trying not to have those outings, which again he did in his last one, which was very refreshing to see. But I think that with Bryce and George, that's kind of my perspective on it. With Brian, I think it was just a matter of like he kind of had those couple rough outings on the road, which he had last year as well, and now he's just trying so hard not to have them, has been my perspective. And then Logan looks like Logan. So I think that's also been something, because you look at last year was kind of rough for him. Definitely did not look like 2024 Logan. And now it's kind of like after that rough first half, he's kind of figured it out. So
Yep.
I think that's been good to see for sure.
I think I heard this on Brady's show today, but do you think Bryce would benefit moving to the bullpen, being like a setup guy or a closer?
I do. I do. I think for Bryce, again, it's like the workload of just 3 stints on the IL in the past 2 years. Like workload is kind of something he only really had in 2024 and hasn't really been able to do that since. I think just for the sake of, him getting through the season and just getting back on track to the point of like he's not going into the offseason hurt. He's not starting the year hurt. I think that just having him in the bullpen, kind of in that role Emerson was in last year, will be very, very good, and just kind of giving Cade that runway to finish out the year. Whether that ends on the final day of the regular season or whether the Mariners squeak in the playoffs. I think that whatever that looks like, you just give Cade the runway at this point and let Bryce finish out the season, but in a way that's beneficial to him and not like, costing you guys wins potentially.
How far is Bryce from free agency?
A while. I don't even think he's under. I think he's under pre-arb next year. I don't even know if next year is his first year of arbitration. I'm actually going to look that up.
Okay, because I would worry if I'm Bryce Miller. I'd worry that my marketability goes down if I become a reliever. Like I would think that teams would want to sign me for far more money as a starter, as a back of the rotation starter than as a you know
But
good
yeah,
reliever.
Bryce Miller had that weird. I forgot about this because he and the Mariners didn't originally agree on arbitration. Then they had that deal with a conditional club option for next year after agreeing to arbitration. But his third year of arbitration would be 2028, so he's not hitting free agency until after 2029.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. I know baseball contracts are weird, but
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that are going to change. That's going to change in the uh, upcoming collective bargaining. So then my question about, you know, wanting to stay a starter kind of is a moot point because he's stuck with the Mariners for a while.
yeah, and I don't think it necessarily for one, just because when he would be a free agent is just like so far removed from now, but also secondarily, I think we're in a baseball situation now where like stuff is a very real thing when it comes to who teams are interested in, because every team, if like starting pitcher has good stuff but hasn't been able to put together with another club, every other club thinks they're going to be the one that puts it together, right? And it's not a question for Bryce of being able to put it together. That second half of 2024 was one of the best pitchers in the American League, finished the year with a sub-3 ERA and 30 plus starts. 2024, he was just hurt, had a great first half to this year. And then, now he's having a rough, but again, we've seen it with baseball. He could also turn it around, but he also just hasn't had this workload in 2 years. So I think for the sake of moving him to the bullpen, I don't think it's something that teams will look at and be like, ooh, we don't know. I don't, at least not this year. I think if that's kind of a common pattern over the next couple of years, which there's no reason why it would be, because really you look at the guys who would supplant any starter on this rotation. It's Cade and maybe Ryan Sloan next year, and that's about it. I don't think that's something that would be a situation long term. I think it's just, again, for the sake of this season, giving Cade that runway and also making sure Bryce can finish out the year and not have to worry about overworking him or kind of battling that war of attrition with him kind of struggling right now. I think that it's just what works best this year. And I mean, look at Emerson. He moved to the bullpen last year. He started in the rotation this year, and he has had by far the best year of his career.
Very, very true. Without saying the wrong thing, and I don't want you to get in trouble because I know you cover the Mariners, but do you think any of the management's going to get let go here after season's end? Do you think they'll clean house?
Clean house, no. I don't think there's a world where they just tear it all down and get rid of Jerry, Justin, and Dan at the end of the year. If they make the playoffs, I think everyone's coming back. That's my point of view. Even though they've vastly underachieved, even if it's kind of a one and done, if they make the wild card and get knocked out, I think that you can kind of justify this season as a lot of people were hurt. Yes, like players underachieved as well, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, Cal was playing hurt for the first half of the year, and then he kind of came back trying to do too much. And I think that's kind of like where he's at right now. Julio had the concussion. Matt's been on the IL twice. Spire spent time on the IL. Donovan had that lingering thing from the hernia surgery with the Cardinals that led to him missing most of the year. That's not something you can predict. Luke was dealing with that flexor thing for most of the year. So I think that if you miss the playoffs, I'm still 50-50 on whether they would fire Dan if they miss the playoffs, just because, again, that lingering thing of the injuries being as prevalent as they were, especially with your stars. I think that that's kind of just something that just kind of it not to say it's an excuse, but that's something that Stanton can look at and be like, okay, maybe this year is just a wash. So I think that I don't think they would clean house regardless, but I'm kind of like more 50-50 on whether Dan would potentially get let go at the end of the season.
Okay, fair answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at it from the perspective of every team gets injuries, and it's the expectation was that we were going to take a leap forward.
Yeah.
And from a fan, from a standpoint, I feel like, heads must roll.
No, from my perspective, I add that disclaimer, but from my perspective of things, it's even with the injuries, it's like you should be at the point where you are still winning.
But you brought up a good thing. You brought up a good point, though. You brought it to us as what Stanton would do, which is really what's
and
more
that's
important.
the decision maker, that's going to be what the determining thing is. And I think that, regardless of whether Dan would get fired or not, I think firing Jerry after this season, I think is because there's a lot of things fans have complained about on Twitter and again, understandably so. I get the frustration. I do not fault any fan for being frustrated at how this year has gone. I think that's a perfectly normal reaction. But I think so many things are just coming down to players are getting hurt or they're just not playing up to their expectations. Like people have pointed to the training staff, and it's Justin Hollander brought up this point last year. It's like, unless a doctor explicitly says a player can't go, all trainers can do is offer their opinion on whether or not a player is able to go. And if it's to a point where it's like, you can't even walk on this thing or you can't even make a fist, it's like, yeah, you're not playing. But a player is always going to tell it if it's a 50-50 thing, and a player is always going to tell a trainer they're ready to go. So, they have no control. If Cal is able to swing a bat with an oblique strain and he says he's ready to go, and a doctor is not telling the trainers or the staff, it's like, hey, you can't do this, he's going to play. If Luke Raley has that flexor injury and he can swing a bat, leading the team in home runs for 2.5 months out of the year, training staff is going to. So it's like there's so many things outside of control that just come down to there were these freak injuries or these lingering injuries that weren't something that landed people on the IL until it absolutely had to. You can look at JP's wrist and Cal's oblique and Luke Raley's thing and definitely say, especially with the benefit of hindsight, that they should have gone on the IL sooner. But those factors, it was just out of anyone's control at that point. And even when you take the injuries out of it, it's like the players have to play. And I'm not, casting blame on the players either, because I know, as much as fans are tired of hearing these post-game notes, they are actively working to make it. And they know, they've said it publicly, like they should be playing better. I think that it just comes down to maybe this year is just a cursed year. That's not a satisfying answer either, but I think there's just so many factors going on that were outside of either two parties or like all parties control. Just again, like just some players not playing up to the level they should be, and just a combination of things. It's like I feel bad for talking about this almost because I wish I had an answer because you look at the talent, like, yes, there should be a team that's right there with Tampa Bay. It's like they shouldn't be fighting for a wild card spot. They should be fighting with Tampa Bay over who's the number one seed in the AL. But that's just it's not where they are right now. So
understood. Hypothetical question to wrap it up. Again, I'll give credit. I heard it on a couple other shows today, so I won't take credit for it. Besides all the factors that we talked about, if the season came down to us making the playoffs after this last road trip, and we don't because of this last road trip, what, in your opinion, what hurts more, the loss in Houston or the 22-0 shutout the other night?
The loss in Houston, because you look at where they're at right now, they're 2.5, 3.5 games out of a playoff spot, 4.5 behind Houston after the loss today. A win is a game forward in both. So if it comes down to kind of, where it's been from 2021 to now, where every single year they've missed the playoffs, it's come down to the final week of the season. You're going to look back at that loss at Houston, especially if it's like you're right there in the American League West standings or one game out of the wild card spot and being like, that one hurts. We should have had that. The Milwaukee game, that was kind of what it was from the jump.
Right on. I agree with you. Houston definitely was the nail, but it sucked, but it is what it is.
And they still won that series too, which I think makes that hurt a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Excellent. One more time, Teren, if you want to give a shout out to your where people can find your content again.
Yes, roundtable.io, the Husky site and the Mariners site. Brady Farkas, my boss, also writes on there. He has the Refuse to Lose Territory podcast, which is great, any place you get a podcast you can listen to on there. And you can join either site and get our content.
Excellent. And as we always do, we end the show with a shout out. Brian, kick us off.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a shout out to my good buddy, Chris Lampkin. I'm going to give him a cheap plug. His cousin, Tom Lampkin, played for the Mariners back in about 25 years ago, but that's not why I'm giving him a shout out. Just wanted to say we appreciate you. You're a hell of a father to your daughter and son, and just know that we love you, man. So stay strong.
Excellent. I'm going to give a shout out to Felicia and CJ, two of my fellow employees at Boeing. Their contract ran out. Today was their last day. Big shout out to Felicia and CJ. And Teren?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to another journalist, Charles Hanamaker, publisher of Circling Seattle Sports. I got a chance to freelance for him a little bit, covering some WNBA games this year, which was, I think we talked about last time, and was a lot of fun. Probably won't cover any more games this year just because of scheduling stuff, but it was very cool to get that experience and that opportunity. So shout out to Charles.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody out there for listening to us here on Seattle Sports Union, on Spotify, on YouTube. Please check us out on social media at Seattle Sports U on X as well. Like and subscribe to us on Facebook. Again, that's Seattle Sports Union. On behalf of the Soul Man, Brian Solak, on behalf of that damn Dirt Duck Matt Page, myself, Abraham Deweese, we thank you, Teren, for being back on the show again. And we thank all of you out there for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.